All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you have questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be below the video if you're on a smaller screen like a mobile device. If you're on a larger screen like a desktop, it's going to be to the right of the video. So let me scroll down here. See where we're starting here. So we start here with Adam E. So Adam E says, "Good afternoon, Q. I had a range session this morning using powder on the face of my driver. Noticed a consistent pattern hitting the ball on the heel. The ball started off to the left, then slicing back to the right. No matter what corrections I tried to make, nothing worked. Any tips on how to avoid hitting on the heel with the driver?" Yeah, so that's pretty normal for the ball flight, because when you hit the ball off the heel, what happens is, and I would urge you to go on YouTube and search like slow motion heel strike. It's kind of cool. But basically, if you imagine I have the club here, and I come in and I hit the ball off the heel, well, what happens is the face will actually twist closed. And that's why the ball will start to the left for a right-handed golfer. But then something happens called gear effect, which will make the ball tend to curve more left to right. So when you hit off the heel, it will tend to start more to the left than it normally would. And then it will tend to curve, have more fade to it, or less draw. Like you can hit a ball with a hook swing, and it may just hook less if you hit it off the heel. So how do we get rid of those heel strikes? Well, the first thing that you want to do is try to hit the ball off the toe. That's really what it comes down to, is adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. So set up to the ball the way that you normally would, and actually try to hit the ball on the toe. And what will happen is that I will likely move the strike more to the center of the face. Now, if you still hit the ball off the heel, you got to exaggerate it even more. You may even need to feel like you're missing the golf ball completely to get that strike to be more in the center of the face. So that's what I do first, and I would keep doing that until you actually start hitting the ball off the toe. Then at that point, then you can ease off it a little bit if you do it a few times in a row. Beyond that, what you can do is kind of change your focus a little bit. So if I have the ball here and I'm having trouble, let's say maybe you tried that. Maybe you tried hitting the ball off the toe, and for some reason, just no matter what you do, no matter how much you exaggerate it, you feel like you're missing the golf ball completely. Now, most people, to be honest with you, just aren't trying hard enough. Not saying, you may just not know any better because you haven't tried this before. But basically, whenever I've worked with a player and I've actually worked with them to try to get the contact point to change on the face, it really just comes down to getting out of your comfort zone a little bit. Not being afraid to hit a bad shot, because right now you're hitting the ball on the heel. So you're already hitting a bad shot. So what's the worst thing that can happen? You hit a bad shot anyway. So you may as well, I know it feels counterintuitive to try to hit a bad shot to hit a good shot, but that's what you need to do sometimes, right? So it's like someone who's slicing, right? If someone who's slicing, they hit the ball in the fairway, if they know the ball's going to slice, it's probably good to aim to the left, right? Well, it kind of feels weird to aim into the trees, to not hit into the trees, but it's kind of the same concept. But some way you can kind of trick yourself is what you can do. Let's do this. If you have a tee, I don't have a tee handy. Actually, yes, I do. I have one on my desk here. There we go. So I got a tee right here. What you can do is, if you're hitting it in the heel, right, you need to feel like you're hitting it off the toe. So what you can do is you can place a tee, about an inch or so to the left of your ball. I don't know if you can see that on the video, but basically I've got a tee sitting right here, just to the left of my ball. I'm going to set up to my ball here, and I'm going to attempt to hit the tee. Right, I'm going to try to hit the tee right in the center of the face. So I'm going to set up to the ball, and I'm going to take a swing, and I'm going to try to hit the tee right in the center of the face. And what will likely happen is your strike will change, right? So I'd hit a few doing that, and then once you're able to do that, I would just kind of imagine it being there, and then I would do the same thing, right? Imagine the tee is there and kind of do the same thing. Because that's essentially what you're doing when you're trying to hit the ball off the toe. So that's one option to do. As far as technical things are concerned, one thing you can look at is setup. Maybe you're standing a little bit too close to the ball. That could be part of it. If you're really crowding the ball, right? If you're really kind of on top of the ball, you could be not leaving a lot of room. Now, even if I was crowding the ball, I could kind of try back out of it to get the strike on the toe. But you may want to try to hit, set up a little bit further away. Now, generally, you don't want to be setting up like this, right, to try to hit the ball off the toe, because that's not going to help either. So if I just look on video, if you're generally, you want to have about a fist width between the end of the club and your thighs there. If you're with your driver, it can be a little bit more than that, right? It can be, it can be, a fist and a half or so, or something like that. That could be a good, because the driver is longer, so you're going to be a little bit more upright and reaching a little bit more for it. Whereas with this is a wedge, where my hands are kind of straight down, you can see I have about fist width. But if I had a driver, I'd be more like this. So you can see that's probably about 2 fists between the ball and the butt end of the club. But if you're standing like this with your driver, you may be too close, and getting a little bit more like that may help. All right, so that's one thing I'd look at. The other thing that I would look at is I would try to feel like you're more in your heels when you're coming into contact. So what may be happening is you could be getting out on your toes and kind of pushing the club out there. Whereas if you feel like you're kind of pushing your hips back and pushing your hips back and creating space and getting in your heels, that can help you. But those are a couple of technical things. But really what it comes down to, the easiest thing to do is just adjusting your feel to get the desired result there. All right, so Pierre A says, I am a lefty. I have an inside to outside swing path, but my ball starting too often, too much to the left. Ouch, curves back. It looks like a hook. The problem with that is that I lose distance, and even if I had on the fairway, I bounce off it because a lot of side spin. Yeah, so it sounds like your club path is too much into out, right? So if you swing too much into out, you have to have, in order to hit the ball on target, you have to have the face closed. You have to have a big difference between your face and your path there. That's why you're getting a lot of curvature. So, you want an inside out path is good to have, but you can have too much of that, right? So, when you look at tour players, there's, if there's a tour player putting curvature on the ball, unless they're trying to hit around something or something like that, if they're trying to hit a little draw or fade into something, their face and path are going to be within 2 or 3 degrees of each other. It's just going to be a slight amount of curvature that's on the golf ball typically. And you're going to lose distance if you have a lot of curvature on the golf ball, because it means you're hitting it more with a glancing blow. So you need to try to get your face and path more married together. And without seeing your swing or seeing the numbers and stuff, it'd be hard to say, but it sounds like you're probably swinging too much into out. Ideally you'd want to be swinging, 3-4 degrees into out at most. It sounds like you're probably swinging 8, 9, 10 degrees into out, which would mean you would have to have the face, quite a bit different than that to get it to curve back, right? So that's what I'd be working on, getting the path to be less from the inside, just a little bit less. And the best way to do that would be to learn how to hit fade. That's really the best way to do it, is to learn how to hit fade. Learn how to swing over the top with an open face, and then just ease off of that a little bit. Now, a great course for you to work through would be the Never Hook Again course. That's what I would recommend. To get to the Never Hook Again course, we've got some great drills in there to help you to swing less from the inside. So to get to that course, I click the house icon. That'll take you to the homepage. Scroll down the homepage, you'll see a list of all the courses there. Then select the Never Hook Again course and get started on those drills. All right, so let's keep going. So Adam E. with another question here says, last question. The pro I work with encourages hitting the ball with my back to the target, like Jack Nicklaus. He says, by pulling the lead arm down from the backswing, this generates a lot of power. Clay talks a lot about opening his body up through the swing. Thoughts on the two approaches? It's really the same way. It's a different way of saying the same thing. You're pulling the lead arm down is opening the body. Opening the body is opening the body. So it's really the same thing. That's what we talk about in the power turn, getting your back to the target. So it's really just a different way of saying the same thing. So Karen A, and I apologize if I mispronounced, or Karen E, sorry, says, hi Q, I got the impact snap device that Clay recommended in the distance course. Is this good training line for the straight line release and lag? Yes, it's great. We have videos for both of those things. And if you're not familiar with what the impact snap is, that's what this guy is right here. And basically what it is good for is understanding the wrist angles that are involved when you get shaft lean to square up the face. So let me explain that a little bit. So when you early release, right? So let's say you're coming in, you're releasing the club, right at the ball. Right? It's what I see a lot of amateurs doing. When you look at tour players, they release the club out in front, and they're getting shaft lean because of that. And when I say the release, just to define what that is, that's where the club head's kind of passing in front of the hands, right? It's the point where basically the club is splitting the forearm. So you can see it's right in front of my hands, and then it passes my hands. This would be behind my hands, in front of my hands, then past my hands. When it's in front of your hands there, when the club is bisecting your arms, that's the release of the club. What we like to see, and what we talk about in the Top Speed Golf System, in the straight line release course, is we like to see that club releasing out in front, about 45 degrees roughly. It's not exactly that. If you're anywhere around 45 degrees, trust me, you're in good shape. But what I see most people doing that I see in lessons is the release is happening like right here, 10 degrees in front or something like that. So when you release the club out, not very far in front, maybe 10 degrees out in front, you have to have certain wrist angles that square up the face. So when you release the club early, your wrist angles are going to look something like this. Your lead wrist is typically going to be cupped, right? So you're going to see an angle like that in your lead wrist. And that trail wrist is typically going to be pretty flat, or even sometimes we see it like this. It's already kind of pushing through right here. But when you get shaft lean, right, if I had those same wrist angles, right, so let's say I have no shaft lean, early release, my lead wrist is cut, my trail wrist is pretty flat. Let's say I just push the handle forward, but keep those wrist angles. Well, my face is going to be wide open when I do that. Now I have shaft lean, but my face is wide open. So I have to change my wrist angles to square up that face, and that's what the impact snap helps you do. If you notice here, it's got the flat edges here, so you can put your hands on there. It really helps you kind of feel the grip and how it should be. But it's got this arm with this ball on it, where I want to have that ball to be touching the inside of my arm when I come into contact. Right, so if I come into contact and I have shaft lean and I have a square face, I'm going to have that ball on my arm. If I come in and I have a flat lead wrist, I have a shaft lean, a flat lead wrist, cupped wrist, you can see that ball is not touching my arm. But if I get my trail wrist bent back, my lead wrist more in a bowed or a flat position at impact, now I can have that touching there, and that's going to help me to square up the face. So it's a good feel. You want to feel that touching your arm as you're coming through there to square up the face. So it's a great device to kind of help you feel what you've got to do as you're coming through contact. So this is definitely a good one to have, and it also can help you. It's got a little slider in here that you can, or I can just get it, so you can see how it snaps as you're coming through. That's why I call it the impact snap. You want to get that snapping out in front. That's kind of where that release point is. A lot of times is where it's coming in and it snaps, right? So if you get it up here, you can get it to where you're creating that lag, then you're releasing that lag out in front. So yeah, I do think it's a great training aid for that. We actually have videos on the website there that with specific drills for the impact snap. Impact snap themselves have a great plethora of drills to do with it as well. If you're interested in getting an impact snap, just go to the website. It's just, I believe it's just impactsnap.com. And if you use promo code C Ballard, all lowercase, C as in Clay, C Ballard at checkout, I believe you can get 10% off. Now, full disclosure, we do get a kickback from Impact Snap, but we could get a kickback from every single training aid there is out there, but we only recommend the ones that we think that are good, right? So we could recommend every single thing out there, but we only recommend what we think is good. So hopefully that makes sense. But Impact Snap, PRGR, the divot board, these are things that we think they're actually really, really good training aids, and that they've helped a lot of people, including ourselves. I've helped students who have them use them and things like that. So recommend it. And one thing I also like about it is it's portable. You can just throw it in your golf bag. You can throw it in your suitcase. You can work on things in the hotel if you're traveling or something like that. I think it's a great thing for that. I have it in my office here. So so I can kind of show sometimes things in office hours, but I also, to work on things to get the feeling of it for myself too. Because sometimes I like to get a little bit flippy, at times. So it helps me kind of reinforce good habits. So I like having it around for myself. But to find those drills that I'm talking about that we have on the website, if you click the house icon that takes you to the homepage, you'll see on the right-hand side, it says member quick links. And you can see there where it has the videos where we have lag video in there. I believe there's something on the release in there. So yes, I'd highly recommend checking out those videos if you have an Impact Snap, or if you're looking to get one, or if you're thinking about getting one. Those drills can kind of help you understand a little bit more about what it's all about. All right. And then went on to ask, also, what do you think of the orange whip for both stretching out the practice timing, the whipping motion for speed? I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I've never used an orange whip before in my life, so I don't really have an opinion on it. But what I can say is that I can see how it can kind of smooth you out a little bit and keep you from getting quick. It's my understanding that it is kind of weighted. It's a little bit heavier. Which I'm not a huge fan of heavier clubs because they can make you lose a little bit of feel. It's like if you lift something really, really heavy and then you lift something light, you don't have as much feel for the thing that's really light, right? So I'm not a big fan of warming up with things that are heavy. I've never been a big fan of putting the donut on the club or taking swings where you're holding like 3 or 4 clubs and taking swings and things like that. Because I think it takes away the feel a little bit. Now, if you're just training for speed, you're just trying to hit the ball as far as you possibly can. Like if I was training to do long drive or something like that, I could definitely see how that could be useful because it does help you. I think it can help you to get the feeling of swinging faster. But when you're trying to hit a golf shot where not only do you need to be accurate, but you need to have speed and accuracy, right? I like to have that feel, and I feel like I lose a little bit of the feel when I do that. So not a big fan of really weighted things, but maybe it's weighted in a way that it doesn't make you lose feel. Like I said, I don't really have experience with it. We're hoping to do some training aid reviews. So, maybe we'll get one and look at it a little bit. But for the most part, I don't really have really any experience with the orange whip to know for sure. What I will say is there's no clear benefit to using an orange whip. I just don't see any clear benefit to it, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't help people, and stuff like that. It's just, when I look at when I'm judging a book by the cover, basically, right? I'm just looking at it for what it looks like and what I think it is, and to me, it doesn't seem like something I would use. So I've never, put down the $100 bill to get one, or however much they are. I'm guessing they're around $100 to get one, just because, I don't usually like investing things that I don't know will actually make a difference. But hey, like I said, it doesn't mean that it won't for you or anybody else. And if anybody has an orange whip and has great experience with it, feel free to leave a comment if you want to share. I'll be happy to share it with everybody else. So Shane J says, when hitting driver, should I be compressing, have forward shaft lean at impact, or should the club head be more forward than the shaft? So it's going to be pretty vertical at impact, but that's just by virtue of the ball position, right? So the ball for an iron, my ball position is like right there, right? It's a little bit ahead of the middle of my stance. But for a driver, my ball position is more off my lead shoulder, so it's more forward, right? So I may look like this. So the club shaft is going to appear to be pretty vertical at impact. You don't want the club head to be in front, though. You always want your hands to be in front at least a little bit. So whether it's a degree or a few degrees, that you want a slight amount. And the average, I can't remember where I saw this, where I can, cite my source, but I saw somewhere that the average on tour is about 1 degree. Now that means that there may be some players that do have the head a little bit in front, but the physics and everything that's going on, you want the handle to be more in front. It's more stable if that is the case. You're much better off kind of almost hitting the ball like a top spin forehand is what you kind of want to feel like with the driver to have the best physical characteristics, impact variables. You want to almost hit the ball like a top spin forehand, like in tennis or ping pong. So where you're kind of de-lofting it, but you're hitting up on it. That's going to allow you to hit low spin, high launching shots, right? Which is going to help you to hit the ball further. If you kind of flip and you have the hands in front, you're going to be adding loft, which is typically going to add spin and make the ball go high and spinny, which isn't good for distance. Or a lot of times people just hit it low on the face if that is the case. So Paul P says, as a right-handed golfer, what are the position my arm should be in on the backswing? Does the left arm elbow need to be straight, or can it be slightly bent? It can absolutely be slightly bent. It really just depends on the player. There can be, you look on tour, you're going to see the arms in all kinds of different positions. You're going to see the arms more vertical. You're going to see the arms flatter. There's pros and cons to either one. If you have the arms more upright, you can generally create more club head speed from there, because don't get in my way. You can create more club head speed from there because you have more space and time to accelerate the club. The con to that is it can be a little bit more difficult to get the club back on plane because the more upright you are, the more you're going to have to shallow the club in the downswing. And then it's kind of the opposite for the pros and cons for a flatter swing. If you're flatter, if you're more like this, right, you're not going to be able to generate as much speed because you just don't have as much space and time to accelerate the club. But it may be easier for you to get the club on plane because it's basically already shallowed out from there. But what I will say, most people who I see who have really flat swings tend to steepen the club in the downswing and come over the top. So they're not even using the benefit. They're kind of getting the worst of both. They're flattening the swing, so they're not having any speed, but then they're not using the advantage of having a flatter swing, which is shallow the club. They come down steep anyway. So you got to find that happy medium that works for you. And now, as far as bending the lead arm, you can have some bend in the lead arm. Look at lots of tour players that bend in their lead arm. Lee Westwood, Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, Angel Cabrera. There's lots of players out there that have some bend in lead arm. If you look at Clay's swing, if you look at my swing, I got a little more bend in my arm than Clay does, but Clay's got a little bit of bend in his lead arm. It's completely fine to have some bend in there. Now, it's kind of like with anything, right? In moderation. You can be excessive with anything and have issues, right? So it's like, if you got a headache, you take a couple aspirin, that's perfect. But if you take the entire bottle of aspirin, you're probably going to have a stomach ache or have some issues, right? So, there can be some excessiveness there. So if you're really bending the arms a lot, it's usually due to an issue. Usually what I see is that people aren't turning their shoulders enough, so they bend the arms to make the swing longer. So if you look here, I'm not going to turn my shoulders very much, and then I'm bending my arms to make my swing longer. So I would just make sure that you're getting a nice full shoulder turn. If you're getting a full shoulder turn, then you have some bend. If you look like this, that's completely fine. That's completely fine. You look at, like I said, all those tour players that I named would be, are doing just fine, obviously, with that lead arm bend. So that's completely fine. But as far as more upright or more flat, as far as the arms go, it's personal preference. You have to find your happy medium where you're getting a good amount of speed and you're able to get the club on plane, right? Because you don't want to get the arms up really high, and then if you really have a hard time getting the club to work from the inside when you do that, then you may want to think about getting a little bit flatter, finding that happy medium for you. All right, so let's keep going here. So Rob T says, still working on the move and trying to get A few simple thoughts. Q, I'm correct that it's the best wait until the top of the backswing to start the shallowing. So let's answer that. So I assume you're asking, is it better to wait until the top of the swing to start the shallowing? Yes. You don't. It only matters how the club is working in the start of the downswing, right? There are some exceptions. If you really shallow the club a lot in the backswing, and then you steepen it to a shallow position, then it's fine. So an example of that would be Ricky Fowler, right? So Ricky Fowler, he gets up to the top of the swing. He's like this. This club is crazy shallow. It's parallel to the ground. It's so shallow. Well, if he shallowed the club from here, it would be like that, right? And that's not going to work. So Ricky Fowler from here actually has to steepen the club a little bit. But if you look, if I from here to a super laid off shallow position and I steepen a little bit, now I've got the club right in the slot. But what most people do when I see people shallow, they'll go up here and then they'll shallow it a little bit and then they start the downswing and it's too steep, right? So generally it's better to have a steep backswing and then a shallow downswing because that's just going to get the forces working in all the right places. And that's what you see 95+% of tour players doing is they're shallowing the club in the start of the downswing. So yes, that's when you want to be doing it. The only exception is if you're really steep you're really shallow in the backswing and you actually need to steepen it just a little bit. But I imagine that applies to a very, very small percentage of people. And a lot of people who do get the club really shallow in the backswing tend to get too steep in the downswing. You're much better off going from steep to shallow. So let's read the rest of the question. My thoughts are at the top, think the right hand is holding a tray, palm up, elbows move in. Then I begin the swing. I'm thinking bowed left wrist while moving the back to the left hand, facing the ground, thinking on the back of the gloves down. Yeah, so that's basically what you're talking about. Is what Ricky Fowler does, which is fine, right? You can be very successful doing that. It's just, most people aren't going to be as comfortable with that. But everybody's a little bit different, right? You may find that that's an easier thing for you to do than the steep to shallow. But steep to shallow is usually what most people do, not shallow to steep. But keep in mind that when you go from shallow to steep, the club still needs to be in a shallow position. And what I mean by that, a good way to kind of see, this is kind of a quick and dirty way, there are some caveats to this, but when the lead arm is parallel to the ground, you want to see the butt end of the club pointing a little bit outside the ball. That would be shallow. And you don't want it to be moving to steeper, right? So if it's pointing there and then it's getting steeper, well, that's not good, right? So with Ricky Fowler, he's super shallow, and then he moves it to there. It's still super shallow, and then he basically gets it in the slot. So he's still really shallow when he gets to that lead arm parallel position. What you see most players doing is they're here, and then they shallow it, butt end of the club pointing outside the golf ball, and then turning through the ball nicely. So George D says, as a left-hander, I can dance pretty good and told I have rhythm. Can that help me in golf? I don't see how it can hurt you. Having good rhythm in golf is probably a good thing. The coordination that is involved in dancing and things like that can be a good thing. Sure. I can see how that can help. I can't tell you from experience. I'm not a dancer myself. So I can't tell you from experience, but I would not be surprised whatsoever if, there are golfers that are good dancers, and things like that. It wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. I just watched your weight change. It seems like I can do that. From 100 yards in, I have a hard time. I think I wasn't making that weight change you suggested. I'll try it next time. I'm 69 years old and mid-90s player, but I just went to the senior tees, and it makes a difference. I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about as far as weight change is concerned, but if it's a short swing, there's no need for loading up, and then if you're not looking for a powerful swing, you don't need to load up. If it's just a pitch shot, I generally keep my feet pretty close together. and there's not a lot of weight shift there. I keep everything pretty central, and I keep everything pretty forward, right? Now, I don't know what kind of club head speed you have, but for a 100-yard shot for me, my feet are probably about that far apart, and I have a 54-degree wedge, and it's more like kind of like a 3/4 swing, maybe close to full swing, but I'm not going for power, right? I'm just going. I'm going for accuracy, right? I'm just trying to hit the ball on that number. Now, if a full swing, all out pitching wedge for you is 100 yards, then that's going to be different, right? That's going to be your full kind of swing, loading up, getting to your lead side, and things like that. So a lot of it depends on your club head speed, but the key is getting to your lead side, right? If you're staying on your backside, you can have trouble, especially hitting wedges. So Michael L says, "Hi Q, because of the great instruction at TSG, including doing the BSMC. If you're not familiar, that's our ball striking masterclass. I'm really improved. I would say, though, that I'm not hitting the fairway, although hitting far, really easily 250. I'm wondering what you think of single and then, what I think single length club, especially the shorter driver for accuracy, low dispersion." Well, I will say this. So Bryson DeChambeau plays single length clubs. His driver is not the same length of his 7-iron. That's the whole thing about that I don't understand about single length clubs. Here's kind of my opinion on single length clubs. And if you're a single length person, more power to you, right? If it works for you, then great. But I don't really see how it really works, because the whole point of single length clubs is to a feel, or at least, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, people who are single length, is a feel like you are swinging the same length club, right? So basically, the idea is you don't have to change your swing, right? You swing every single club like it's a 7-iron, right? Because all the clubs are the 7-iron length. Well, what happens when you do that is the wedges, right? When they get to where they're 7-iron length, you're going to generate more club head speed with those, and they're going to go a mile in the air, right? And then your longer clubs, like a 3-iron or a 4-iron, if they're the same length they're going to be really low, right? You're not going to have that extra length on there, that little bit of extra length on there to give you a little bit more speed to get it higher. So what ends up happening is that you have to change the weighting of the clubs to get them to get the trajectories and everything to make sense, right? And the length and the ball flight and everything to make sense. But now you're not swinging the same club, because you're swinging a club that's the same length, but now they're going to all feel different because they're different weights and things like that. And also, your driver is not going to be the same length as your 7-iron. You wouldn't hit it very far. You may hit it. I mean, you may hit it. You may hit it straighter, but I mean, you may as well hit your hybrid or something like that, right? If you're going to cut your driver down, right, to the same length of a 7-iron. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Is mainly what I'm saying. So that's what I would recommend doing is, stick to what you've got. Single length to me is not the answer. I don't really understand why anyone would do it, and that's why there aren't a lot of people that do it. I'm not trying to poo-poo single length clubs. If you have single length clubs and you play well and you love them, then that's all that matters, right? Is what you like. But I just know that it doesn't make any sense to me why you do it. The initial thought makes sense, but then when you realize what happens when you do that, now it's like, well, you're defeating the purpose, right? Because now everything changes anyway. So, and Bryson's always had a driver his driver is not the same length of his 7-iron. So he doesn't have all the same length of clubs anyway. So basically that's what it comes down to. If you're wanting to tighten things up, you've been through the ball striking masterclass, which, if you're not familiar with what the ball striking masterclass is, it's our program where, the top speed golf system, that's technique based. That's all the things. That's the way that you move, basically, right? Whereas the ball striking masterclass is your ability to control the way that you move. right? So that's your ability to control the strike on the face angle, the club path, your ground contact, and things like that. So with the driver, what it comes down to, because you're not hitting the ground, what it comes down to is your strike location, right? Your face and your club path. So something is off there, and that's what I would be looking at it to correct. Beyond that, I'd be just looking to get a proper fitting for your driver. Maybe it's possible that you could hit the ball better or have less dispersion with a shorter driver and not lose much distance, right? That's a no-brainer if that's the case. For example, Clay plays a longer driver than I do. I can't remember exactly how long a driver I play, but he plays, I think, a 46-inch driver. I think mine is 44 and a half, maybe 45. So my driver is significantly shorter than his, but I swing my driver as fast as his driver, right? I've swung his driver. I swing his driver just as fast as my own. And it's just the way that you're made. Clay has shorter arms than he's a little bit taller than me, but he has shorter arms than I do. And I'm shorter and I have longer arms than he does. When we reach up to something, he's taller than me, but my arms are longer. So we actually reach up to about the same point. We figured this out one time. We were doing a vertical jump test, and we reached up to basically the same point on the wall from flat-footed position. And he's taller. He's probably 2 inches taller than me, but we reached up to the same position because my arms are longer than his. So, that has something to do with it, I think. The reason why I prefer a shorter driver is probably because my arms are longer and he prefers a longer driver because his arms are short. Now, the only way you really know that is by getting professionally fitted and using different length clubs to see where you're at with things. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend, it's a big leap to go from, single length to variable length clubs because there's just a lot to work out there. So anyway, that's just kind of my opinion on that. But feel free to share if you got single length clubs and you love them and they're working great for you. Feel free to share. So let's keep going here. So David S says, watching a lot of the something, they seem to pause at the top of the backswing, some more than others. Is that to allow the hips to start the downswing? I don't really see a lot of pausing at the top. So I have to disagree with you there. I'm not sure exactly. You didn't say watching a lot of and then there was nothing there. But I assume you're talking about PGA Tour. I don't really see it. There are you do see a lot of the kind of like Japanese players pause at the top. I don't really know why they do that, to be honest. But usually there's some flow there, right? There's going to be the club is usually constantly moving. But with like Matsuyama, he paused at the top. It could be just like a sequencing thing a little bit, but you got to do it. It's generally it's better to have some flow and keep things going because it's better for speed when you do that. But if you find that it helps you to sequence a little bit better, that's fine. It's just something you have to play around with. It's more personal preference than anything else. But you would probably have to ask those players that do pause at the top. I know Matsuyama has commented on before, and from what I understand, he doesn't even realize he's doing it, and he actually wishes that he didn't do it because he doesn't like the way that it looks. Let's keep going here. So Michael L says, sorry. Okay, we already answered that. So Brian B says, can you explain the swing thoughts, mechanics of hitting fades? I'm watched the bonus video on how to stop hooking, but would welcome any tips you can offer. So hitting fades, well, one, there's tons of videos on the website for hitting fades. So if you want to check out any of those, but what needs to happen when you hit a fade is the face just needs to be open to the path. So how I hit a fade is I will set up with my body a little bit open. And what that does is that helps get my path more working to the left of the target, right? And then I will take a little bit of a weaker grip to help me get the face a little bit open when I'm coming through contact. And I also try to push my hands forward a little bit more. That's kind of an advanced technique, but that's the technique that I like to use. The reason why I like to use that is because when you hit a fade, it opens the face to the path. And when you open the face, it adds loft. So I like to try to get a little bit more shaft lean when I'm hitting a fade, so that way I don't lose that loft. I'm not adding loft and hitting the ball higher. That's why a lot of times if you've ever hit draws and fades, you'll oftentimes, you'll hit your draws further because the draw is the opposite. You typically will close the face. You will close the face to hit a draw, and that de-lofts the club, right? So you'll usually get a little bit more distance, and then the fade's the opposite. So usually when I'm hitting a fade, I try to have my hands a little bit more forward. Well, when you push your hands a little bit more forward, it actually opens the face a little bit. So that's basically what I try to feel is a little bit of a weaker grip, and I try to get my hands a little bit more forward, and I set up my body to the left and try to hit the ball, try to get my hands really, really forward and try to get the ball to start to the left of the target and curve back to the right. That's how I do it, but if you just want to do it with a weaker grip, that's completely fine too. There's lots of ways to do it, but what has to happen is the face has to get open to the path. So you can set up with a closed stance, right, and a strong grip, and swing to the left with an open face and hit a fade. There's lots of ways to do it. It would be tougher to do it that way, right? But there's lots of ways to do it. So if you want to check out some videos on how to hit a fade, videos on anything on the website, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a search box. Just put in the word fade in there. You'll find lots of videos in there. And then if you're on a mobile device, click the icon in the upper right-hand corner. That will expand the menu. Scroll down the bottom of that menu. You'll find the search window there. So Stephen W. says, losing lag in the swing, not casting from the top, but gradually losing from P5 to impact. It's hard to say without seeing your swing, but I'd recommend working on the straight line release course. That course is all about getting everything to release out in front. If you want me to pinpoint specifically what you need to do, I would need to see your swing through a program like Unlimited Swing Reviews that we have. So if you're interested in doing Unlimited Swing Reviews, click the get a review link at the top of the page, and then you can see what swing reviews are all about. If you're you're interested in signing up, scroll down to the bottom of that page and you'll see where you can sign up. Myself, I'll be down there. We got a few other instructors that you can sign up with as well. If you don't see a spot available, the spots get gobbled up fast. So a lot of times we don't have spots available. So if you don't see a spot available, just join the waiting list for the instructor that you want to work with. And or you can sign up for the waiting list for all of them if you want. And then you'll get an email whenever we open up spots, and then you can sign up at that time. But if you see a spot available, go ahead and grab it. Then you can get to work on what the specific thing is. Beyond that, I'd be working on the straight line release course, which to get to the straight line release course, click the instruction tab, then click the Top Speed Golf System, then the straight line release. So Clark P says, being determined to start down using the lag and everything, ball goes 90 degrees to the right. Being determined to start down using the lag and everything, ball goes 90 degrees to the right. Sounds like you're shanking it. If you hit the ball off the hosel, the ball will go way off to the right like that. So I'd look at your swing on video and see what's going on there. If you're ever trying to work on technique or anything, it's important to videotape your swing so that way you can really see what's going on. Because a lot of times what you feel is not the reality of what's going on. What you're trying to do is usually not the reality, especially if it's something new that you haven't been able to do before. So you're going to be able to clearly see if you're hitting it off the hosel if you're looking at a slow motion camera. If that's the case, I'd try to hit the ball off the toe. Just set up to it, try to get the lag, and intentionally hit the ball off the toe. If you still hit it, shank it, then I would exaggerate it more. You may need to feel like you're missing the golf ball, something like that. So that's what I'd recommend doing. But look at yourself on video and see what's going on there before, for sure. Most likely it's a shank, though. So Thabo M, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. That's a new one for me. So Thabo M says, how do the pros keep their shoulders closed on the downswing in transition? Well, it comes down to getting a good shoulder turn, so getting a good power turn, and then side bend, right? So when you go up to the top of the swing, you're going to have some left side bend for a right-handed golfer. And you want to have a good shoulder turn. Then when I start my downswing, I don't, what I see a lot of people do, try to open up right away, is they go like this. Well, now I don't have any side bend, right? So in order to get in that position, I need to have side bend, so that's crunching into my right side as I'm coming through contact. That allows me to have my shoulders kind of closed off and then opening up as I come into contact. So it comes down to good shoulder turn, and then getting that side bend as you're coming into contact. A good drill for that would be just take a club, put it across your shoulders, right on top of your shoulders there, and then turn and try to angle that club down, get a good shoulder turn, and then try to keep the angle of this club down as you're coming through, right? So that would go like this, angle down, and then keep it angled down as you're coming through. You may even want to feel like it's angling out that way a little bit if you're someone who's going like this, because that can help you to exaggerate that even more. So going up the top and then feeling that as you're coming through. So keeping this angle down and getting that good shoulder turn at the top. Once you get comfortable with that, do some practice swings trying to implement that same feeling. So Sheila R says, can you do a quick review to demo how to get compression for a 3 and 4 wood? It's no different than compressing any other ball. We have to understand what compression means. All compression means is transferring as much energy as possible from the club head, from the club face to the ball. That's really what compression is. So, and that comes from hitting the ball in the center of the face. That comes from making ball first contact. That comes from a square club face. That comes from a path, the being on plane, having the club come in directly into the ball instead of over the top. So it really just depends on what. If a better question, Sheila, would be, what is the actual issue when you're hitting your 3 or 4 wood? What is happening when you're not compressing the ball? What's happening with the ball flight and contact? Is it a toe strike, a heel strike? Is it chunks, thins? Is it a top shot? Is it a slice? Is it a hook? And then that's what it comes down to. That's how you compress it. You compress it by center face contact, ball first contact, square club face, path on plane. Also de-lofting the face. If you're flipping it a bunch or adding loft, that's not going to be as much compression. So, and it's the same way with any club you hit. Any club that you're trying to compress, it's going to be the same thing, right? You're always trying to hit the ball in the center of the face, square club face, things like that. So ball first contact, obviously with the driver, hopefully there's no ground contact at all, right? So, but that's what it comes down to. So really what it is you got to look at what of those things are you struggling with, and then you improve that to compress the ball better. So Frank M says, having a problem coming inside of my downswing as I intend to come across the ball. How do I get consistently inside on the downswing? I'd recommend working through our Never Slice Again course and or the Move course. Both of those courses are going to get you, shallowing out the club, getting the club to work from the inside. Lots of great drills to do in there. So those would be the drills I'd highly recommend working on. So to get to any of those, click the instruction tab. Click the house icon at the top of the screen. That'll take you to the home page. Scroll down the home page. You'll see a list of all the courses there. So Stephen W says, everything I see says don't try to hold lag. I'm not sure how to keep the lag from leaking. You don't want to literally hold lag, right? So you don't want to actually come through the swing like this, right? But you may need to feel like you're doing that to actually have it letting go, right? So you may want to try that and feel like you're holding it off and see what it looks like on video. I would imagine it probably looks something like that, right? So, you may want to feel like you are holding the lag and turning through as much as you can to actually get it to release out in front. So Doug C says, how do you stop standing up in the downswing? Depends on why you're standing up. So courses I would look at would be the move, the stop early extension course, the straight line release course. Those will be all courses I would look at. There's just a lot of reasons why you got to find the root cause, right? So, but there could be many root causes. In order for me to know what the root cause is, I'd have to see your swing to know for sure. And that would be through our unlimited swing review program. So if you'd like to check that out, click the get a review link. But besides that, I would look at the stop early extension course and see if some of that's kind of matching up with what you're seeing on video in your swing, the straight line release course, the move, those sorts of things. Because all of those, if you're not doing those things, they can definitely be the root cause as to why you're standing up. Because you're standing up to make room for the club. You're standing room to get the club to work from the inside. You're standing up to shallow the club at the bottom instead of hitting down into the ground too much. There's lots of reasons why you could be doing it. So Sheila R says, for the first time yesterday, I ensured my tilt at address and coming through the ball. I really felt that position is which you released the club out ahead. My best drive ever. Awesome. Thanks for shouting. Sheila, glad it helped. Goes on to say, well, those soft-handed chips to the green, mostly with 56 and P-wedge, higher and soft ball bounces and rolls to the pin. Only way to make par. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. So Peter R says, is the move also accomplished by moving the right elbow over the right hip in the downswing? So that definitely helps. So what you're talking about is what's called external rotation of your arm, right? So if you imagine an arm wrestler, right? If you're arm wrestling, if you move your elbow this way, this is winning the arm wrestling contest. That's internal rotation. That's going to, if I do that in the downswing, that's going to steepen the club, right? And then if I lose the arm wrestling contest, that's external rotation. That's going to shallow the club. So yes, that's basically what you're doing. When we tell you turn the doorknob to the right for right-handed golfer, that's what you're doing. You're externally rotating your trail arm, right? And you're internally rotating your lead arm, and that's what helps shallow the club. So yes. So Richard A says, I use the orange whip regularly. I have increased my club head speed by 8 miles per hour. It has also coordinated my swing and smoothed it out. Highly recommend. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Richard. I'll have to check it out myself. Yeah, like I said, it just is not something that clearly, it just looked more like a gimmick to me, which most of the training aids are. And I'm a huge skeptic, so usually I just don't buy stuff like that. And I didn't have any buddies that I knew that used it or anything. If I had like 3 buddies come up to me and say, hey, I use the orange whip, it's awesome, it works great, and I was seeing the differences that they were getting from it, that would be proof enough for me to get one, but I just didn't have any of that kind of experience. So I always thought it was kind of a gimmick. So George C says, I'm left eye dominant, as I believe Clay is also. I don't know if Clay is or not. I think he's actually right eye dominant. Is there anything I need to do differently in my setup, i.e. eye line, etc.? The main thing is in putting, you just want to make sure that your left eye is kind of straight down on the ball, or at least behind the ball a little bit. If you get your left eye, let's say you have your nose going straight down on the ball and your left eye is kind of looking back at the ball, it can kind of throw off. It doesn't mean that you can't putt well. I just think it's a little bit more difficult. I'm right eye dominant, so I wouldn't really know. But I imagine if I was putting left-handed, right, I just feel like if I had to look back that way and then toward the hole, I just feel like it would throw off my line quite a bit. So, if I was left-handed, I would try to get my right eye to be a little bit more behind the ball, right? I'd play the ball a little bit more forward in my stance, right? And I'd have my eye behind, so that way I can kind of see everything out in front of me. But other than that, there's not really, any other adjustments you'd really need to make. So Richard M says, is there a difference between the release in an iron versus a driver? No, not really. It's just the sensation can be different because, with the iron, you're hitting the ground, right? You're hitting down into the ball. You're contacting the ball earlier in the swing arc. Whereas with a driver, you're contacting the ball later in the release. So The release itself isn't different. The movement of how the release is, it's not different. It's just where you're contacting the ball within the swing arc is different between a driver and an iron, which is why it can feel vastly different, even though the actual release itself really isn't different. And also, the club is much longer, and things like that, which can make it feel a lot different. So Adrian L says, with the TSG system, I'm starting to hit my irons 5-3 pitching wedge better now. Still can't seem to make solid contact, fats, thins, hooks with my hybrids or woods. With the longer irons, is the exact same swing, or should I make compensations, take away ball position for the increased length? If so, any drills you recommend for the longer clubs? I would just recommend you try to hit your other clubs the exact same way you hit your 5 through the pitching wedge. What I see a lot of times is people get the ball position too far forward with those longer clubs, and when they do that, when they try to swing the club the same, the club ends up bottoming out before the ball, and that's going to lead to thin shots, top shots, chunks, kind of what you're talking about there. It can cause hooks too because the face is getting more closed, right? So you're swinging the club down an arc, right? It reaches a low point and then starts working to the left, right? So if you're coming in and it's you're hitting the hook, that face could be rolling over and closing. So my guess is you just need to move the ball position more back with the hybrids and the longer irons. You probably just got the ball position too far forward. So Larry L says, Q, your explanation of how the feet work in the swing helped me so much this week in improving my ball strike. Can you explain once again to be sure I didn't miss something? We don't have a lot of time, so I'll do kind of the cliff notes. I just recommend reviewing the video again. But basically, 50-50 at address with the pressure in the feet. You want to load up right away in the swing. That's a big key there. Load up right away. And when I say load up, I'm talking about get as much pressure as you can in that trail foot right away to start the swing. A lot of people I see, they just start swinging the arms. They don't start loading up until they get up to the top. And they end up with a big sway and starting the downswing without getting pressure in the lead foot. So we want to get load up. And then once you get about halfway back, lead arm parallel, that's more actually going to start recentering as you get to the top of the swing. And now I'm going to start putting pressure into my lead foot. And now I'm going to start increasing that as I come to impact. So 50-50 at address, 75-80% in my trail foot pressure in my trail foot, about lead arm parallel to the ground in my backswing. I'm going to recenter as I go up to the top. So I'm going to go about 50-50 at the top. And then at impact, I'm going to be about 75-80% in my lead foot. And then in the full finish, I'm going to be about 85-90% in my lead foot. So that's what's going on as far as the pressures in the feet. So Mike J says, are there any drills you can recommend to help me hit higher on the face with my driver? I average 5 to 6 degrees up angle of attack. Have experimented with different tee heights. Master Club Fitter says it's a technique, not shaft related. So did he tell you what the technique was? It's hard to say without seeing your swing, but I would guess you're an early releaser, right? So you're probably coming in and early releasing, and that's getting the shaft, that's getting the contact higher on the face. You get to where you're releasing later, you're coming in more like this, and then releasing out front. That'll help you get the strike higher on the face. You could also be swinging too much from the inside, right? I would look at your swing on video and see what's going on there. It's hard to say without seeing your swing, but that's what I would guess is going on. So the straight line release course will help you to get that release more out in front. If you're swinging too much from the inside, the never hook again course, I imagine you may be hooking or block slicing or blocking shots. That could be helpful as well. To get to either one of those courses, click the house icon, then the homepage. Or to get to the homepage, you'll see the list of courses on the homepage there. So I'll try to answer. Man, I can't. I wish I could stick around and answer everybody's questions, but unfortunately, I gotta get going here. Who won the vertical leap contest? I think Clay did, but it wasn't by much. And I was heavier at that time too. So I don't know. Maybe if we tested it again, maybe I'd win right now. Thanks for the explanation, Sheila. Just so I can answer some others who haven't asked questions yet. I'm gonna skip yours real quick here. Stephen S says, when I do the drill to bow my wrist at impact, club face very close. I generally have a fairly closed face at the top. When I open it at a bit, the club face at impact with bowed wrist still is closed. How do I correct this? Sounds like you probably have a strong grip, which means you don't have to bow the wrist as much. So just don't bow the wrist as much, and the face will be just fine. Karen E says, I have orange whip has helped my club head speed. Thanks for sharing. Having more difficulty with 56-degree wedge versus pitching wedge at 46 degrees. I slice it more. Any tips for slicing? I'd recommend the Never Slice Again course to get the club swinging from the inside with a closed face. To get to the Never Slice Again course, click the house icon. That'll take you to the homepage. Go down on the homepage there. You'll see a list of all the courses. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you all next time.